Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to change the transmission fluid in a 2001 Dodge Ram 1500. This guide is going to be for the 46RE transmission, so let's get started. Alright, go ahead and lay something down just to protect your driveway. And take your pan and just put it underneath and center it underneath the transmission fluid pan. I really like these square pans because it actually fits the whole width of this, and it should catch majority of that oil when it drains out. All right, so there's gonna be 14 bolts that hold these on. I believe these are 1/2 inch. What I plan on doing is removing most of the bolts on this side. That way it can, and then just loosening the back ones. That way this will lean, and then it can drain out the fluid from one side of the pan down into the catch pan. I'm gonna start on the farthest side away and then work my way towards me. That way I don't get oil all over my hands if it starts leaking. As you can see, it's starting to drip. So just leave that there and let that drain until it comes to a slow drip. Alright, so the drip has slowed down quite a bit. So now I'm going to go ahead and remove the rest of the bolts and then drop the pan. Okay, so let this down, more fluid's gonna fall out, so just be careful. Go ahead and let some of that fall out, and then I'm gonna remove the last bolt. And slowly lower it, and then put it on your pan. Just let that sit for a minute. And then take this pan out and then clean it up. Here's the inside of the pan. Actually, it looks really good. Actually, I don't see any metal swirls in here. Here's the magnet. It is pretty caked up though. So we'll go ahead and get this cleaned up and put it back on. I really wanted to go ahead and replace the pan since it had some surface rust on it. However, none of my local parts stores had a new pan available and was on a timeline to get the truck back together. So I went ahead and just removed all the old chipping paint best that I could and painted it black for now. Also, I'm going to go ahead and remove the gasket, the old one. Come up here and just pull it off. Some of it may get stuck, so you might have to use a scraper tool to get it off, to clean it up. Just go ahead and go around the whole base of the transmission and just pull the gasket off. Just like that, and it looks like it all came off in one piece. Alright, next we're going to remove the filter. This is a T25 Torx bit. And then remove the filter. Alright, next we're just going to clean up the bottom side of the transmission where the gasket's going to connect to the pan. And this I'm just using a degreaser on the bottom right here, cleaning up all that oil and debris. If you do have, like I said, if you do have any of the gasket still stuck to it, you want to make sure you get that off so your gasket will get a nice flat seal against the bottom of the transmission. If it does get stuck, you can use a scraper, but be very careful not to score the aluminum on the bottom of the transmission. If you do, that could cause leaks when you reinstall your pan. And you want to use a lint-free rag when you're cleaning this so you don't get any lint up inside your transmission. Alright, since I have everything off, before I put the filter back on, I'm going to be checking this spring that's in this location right here. Sometimes these will break due to the high temperatures that they undergo, so it's a good idea to check it since you already have everything off. As you can see, that thing fell out, but the spring is in good shape, so I just put that back in there. And then just push the spring back up in there. And that spring is good, so we're not going to change it out. Just go ahead and reinstall your screws. Next, we're going to take our new filter and install it, same way we took the other one off. And these actually don't need to be torqued down. I think if you do torque them, the torque spec is only about 3 foot-pounds. But since I don't have a torque wrench that goes that low, I'll just be doing it by hand. So you just want to get it tight. You don't want to like over tighten this. And then do the same thing with the other screw. Put it back. Just get your hand tight. You don't need to get crazy with it. So while waiting on the paint on the pan to dry, I'm going to go ahead and adjust the rear band. And to do that, we're going to be backing off this lock nut all the way to about the middle of the bolt. This is a square bolt, and it requires an 8mm wrench. All right, so I'm going to take my 11/16 socket and just loosen up the locking nut. I'm going to be using a breaker bar just to break it free. Just like that. And you just want to back that nut off there about halfway, about 5 turns. Don't have to come all the way off, just about right there. And then what you're going to do is you're going to tighten that bolt down to 72 inch-pounds, which is about 5 or 6 foot-pounds. So it doesn't need to be super tight, just to where you feel it get tight. And then you want to back it off 2 full turns. So like I said, just tighten this all the way up. Should turn pretty easy. Alright, once you get it tight, you're going to back it off 2 full turns. Alright, so the trick I'm going to do is just put a mark at the top so I know how many turns I'm doing. And then I'm just going to back it off 2 full turns. That's 1. You about to leave me?
And that's 2. And then torque the locking nut down to 30 foot-pounds.
Okay, get that tight so it doesn't come off. And make sure it's still facing the correct direction. And you're good to go.
I went ahead and adjusted the rear band since I had the pan off and it was easy to get to. There's also the front band, which is adjusted on the outside of the transmission under the driver's side, and is basically the same process. First, loosen the lock nut from the adjustment screw. Then you're going to want to tighten the adjustment screw to 72 inch-pounds. Then you will need to back the screw off 2 7/8 turns. It's a good idea to mark the bolt, that way you know how many turns you're making. And then tighten the lock nut to 30 foot-pounds. Since my transmission is shifting just fine, I'm not going to adjust the front band at this time, but it can be done at any time if needed. If your transmission is shifting fine, then a band adjustment isn't necessary.
Alright, now that we got all that done, we're going to go ahead and put the pan and gasket back on. Alright, got the pan all cleaned up. Put a little bit of paint on it just to slow down some of that surface rust that was on the outside of the pan. I went ahead and cleaned the magnet up and put it back in. And now we're going to install the gasket. I decided to go with the Felpro just because I've used them in the past and had a lot of good luck with them not leaking. And since the fluid costs quite a bit of money, I don't want to have to redo this. So let's go ahead and put this on. First, I'm just going to apply some of the sealer to it. So what I'm going to do is just apply a small amount all the way around the outside of this rim.
And for the sealer, I'm going to be using Permatex Ultra Black Gasket Maker. Gasket sealers are designed to fill in any irregularities or imperfections on the mating surfaces of the components being sealed, and helps to prevent fluid leaks.
And like I said, you don't need a lot, just enough to where the gasket will stick to it. So just get it lined up with your holes. And then just smash it down into the sealant. Like that. Alright. Go and get it seated on there good like that. What I'm going to do now is just put all the bolts in. That way the gasket doesn't move when I'm trying to install it. And they actually won't fall out because the gasket's a little bit tighter. So it will hold this bolts in place. Alright, now we're going to install it on the truck.
And the torque specs for the pan will be 13 foot-pounds.
Alright, so we're just going to push the pan straight up, get it lined up, just gently slide it over. Make sure you don't hit anything, and then just get it lined up. So I'm going to go ahead and get these finger tight first, don't strip anything. Just get a couple of these started, and that way they don't fall out on you. Alright, once you get a couple of them started, just go ahead and tighten them up in a crisscross pattern. So I'm just going to get these tight first, and then I'm going to go in a crisscross pattern. That way the gasket will seat flat against the pan and the transmission. So now we're going to torque these down in a crisscross pattern. So I'm going to start on this side, and then I'm going to go the opposite side. Alright, now that your pan is tight, we're going to go ahead and fill it up with transmission fluid from the transmission dipstick.
Before I refill the transmission with fluid, I'm going to go ahead and measure out how much I removed from the transmission originally. This came out to about 5.9 quarts, so I'm going to add that amount back into the transmission and then check the level. This transmission, you want to make sure that you're using only ATF plus 4 transmission fluid.
Go ahead and take your long nose funnel and just stick it in the fill tube like that, and add your fluid.
And on the second gallon, I'm going to use just under 2 quarts.
Okay, that looks good. So we're going to check the level real quick. Slide the dipstick down into the tube. All right, go ahead and start it up, and then we're going to shift it through all the gears.
You want to slowly shift through all the gears, as this ensures all the new fluid cycles through the transmission and will give you a much more accurate reading of the fluid level.
Cycle through all the gears once, then go back in the reverse direction.
Alright, to check the level, make sure that your vehicle is parked on a flat level surface and that your engine is running and up to operating temperature. Carefully pull out the transmission dipstick from its tube and wipe the dipstick clean with a lint-free cloth or paper towel, and then reinsert the dipstick back into the tube until it's fully seated. Wait a few seconds and then remove the dipstick again. Check the fluid level and ensure that the fluid level is within the hash marks. If it's not, go ahead and add a little bit more fluid and continue to check it until it's within the full range. It's a good idea to check your transmission fluid a couple times throughout the week after you change the fluid to ensure there's no leaks. And you're good to go. Alright, well that's how you change the transmission fluid and filter in your 46RE transmission. If you found the video helpful, feel free to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to see more content like this in the future. And as always, thanks for watching.